Yes, everyone, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. It's Jack here, and we're going to be talking about Emerson Royale replacements. I just wanted to get the conversation started, get the ball rolling on this one, because it looks like Emerson could be headed to AC Milan quite soon. I think he's agreed personal terms with the club. Looks like there might be a fee of the region of 15 million euros to 20 million euros being negotiated between Spurs and AC Milan. And since Emerson, I'm not sure if he is being included in the Copa America, but if he isn't, I could see this move being done in the next week or so. So might as well get the conversation started, get the ball rolling on potential Emerson replacements that I could see us being linked with, but also guys that I think actually would be decent options too. It's a bit of a mix of both, ones that I just might guess that we could be linked with, but also ones that I think would be ideal candidates. So let me know, everybody, in the comments which ideal candidates you think would be good enough to replace Emerson, but also good enough to provide decent competition for Pedro Porro, who's such a hard person to find anybody, I think, to try to give him good competition. So let me know, everybody, when it comes to that. And if you can as well, smash the like button for us. We really would appreciate it. And let's move on into this video. First player is going to be Konoplya from Shakhtar Donetsk, the Ukrainian international, and it wouldn't be a scout report style video of mine if there wasn't a Shakhtar Donetsk player being mentioned quite early in the video. And the reason I liked him is just because he's somebody that stood out to me. When I have watched European football this season, I usually do try to get a bit of Shakhtar, just a team that I have a soft spot for. I always feel like there is hidden talents that are coming through that team. And Konoplya looked like a decent one to me, where he's turning 25 in August. His contract, I think, is up in the next few years or so. I think he'd be a very cheap signing for Spurs. We obviously have maybe slightly fractured relationship with Shakhtar after that Solomon deal, but hopefully not everything has been ruined between us and them. He's 1.8 meters tall. That would be around 5 feet 9 inches. And I've just seen a lot of him play over the last season. And the Shakhtar team I thought were impressive because they didn't have the most talented of players or the deepest of squads or anything, but they did play a pretty attractive style of football. They weren't defensive first or anything by that. They actually did try to draw teams onto them. They played out from the back. I think that stemmed from the fact that they hired, I think, kind of a quarter way through the season, they hired Arne Slot's assistant manager. I think he's an itch, or at least I think he's from, one of the, like, Croatia or something like that. And whenever you're being coached by an itch, you can definitely see some of the players improve in quality. But in all seriousness, I just think he's a guy that's shown in the Champions League to me, and also in the Europa League. And in those 3 Champions League games that I watched of him, he had 2 goal creating actions. He had 8 shot creating actions, 3 key passes, 6 crosses put into the box, and he had 3 out of 4 successful take-ons. So in a small sample size of 3 games, he actually looked quite positive in a group that I don't think anybody expected Shakhtar to even get to a Europa League spot like they did. And just to add to it too, in the game versus Barcelona, actually, and I think it was in a 2-1 loss to Barcelona, he had the most tackles and interceptions of anybody else in his team and in his side. And he also only missed 1 tackle of those 5 out of 6 tackles that he had. He only missed 1 of them. And on top of that as well, he had 2 key passes in the game, which was the most of any other Shakhtar player. So he's just a guy I just throw in there straight away that I think is somebody that we probably won't be connected with, someone we won't be linked with, but I think is one of those kind of secret gem, kind of guys, or maybe hopefully a secret gem that at least I was impressed by, that nobody probably thinks of or nobody probably even knows about. Moving into another one quite quickly that I feel like Spurs could be connected with, just because he could again be a cheap signing. His contract expires in 2025, and at one point in time he was a very highly rated German international, and his name is Ridley Baku. He's 26 years of age right now, 1.76 meters tall, not very tall, but he was a highly rated right wing back / right back. He can occupy both roles, and I think he's more attacking first than he is defensive. But what I think I liked about his game was he was very agile, a good dribbler, just was good at creating havoc, and especially at just taking on his man and making things happen. Just hasn't really worked out for him since his best season at Wolfsburg, which was in 2020-21, where he scored 6 goals and 7 assists. I just feel like since that season of 2020, things have just gone downhill for Wolfsburg, but have also gone downhill for Ridley Baku. And so in this next season or two, I wouldn't expect him to want to renew that contract if he wants to get his career back on track. So I could just see this as a signing that Spurs might look at because he kind of fits the mold of the system, attack first, somebody who could drop into midfield, at one point very highly rated, but also could be available for the cheap. So I'm not someone I'm going to be super excited about this. At one point, I was super excited about this player. It's just that a lot of things have happened, a lot of things have changed, and he hasn't really hit the heights. Just that I could guess that Spurs might be linked with him this summer. Another one that I could see Spurs being linked with that I'm not super hot on, but again, just guessing that Spurs could be linked with him, is weirdly Issa Kabore. He had an okay loan spell at Luton Town. He's 23 years of age, Man City player. His contract also expires in 2025. And I felt like with Issa Kabore, there were good signs that the guy knew how to do something going forward. He actually had okay dribbling numbers, decent carrying numbers, and actually was in the top 14 percentile of any fullback in terms of getting crosses into the box, which is what we want to see from our fullbacks when they are in those positions. And what I felt like was a big concern, though, with him was he made a lot of errors defensively, and especially, I think, when it came to dealing with crosses defensively. We saw some own goals happen for him. He actually, I think, avoided a couple of extra own goals. He really did always look quite nervous when having to deal with that type of stuff defensively. And then 1v1, he wasn't, I think, very brilliant. He often could get skinned, and you could see Luton Town's defense sometimes starting to struggle towards the end of games because he just wouldn't be able to sustain kind of a good defensive performance for a whole 90 minutes. But what I could tell is, and from when I watched him, is that not a bad dribbler, not a bad ball carrier, and just knew how to get down the byline and put in an okay cross. And I think the stats more or less reflected that on FBref. Now, this is a player I'd be far more excited to see Spurs linked with. Jan Couto of Girona. He's 22 years of age, Brazilian international, 1.68 meters tall. If you ever recognized him or if you ever watched a bit of Girona, I think he often had a pink hairstyle, if I'm not mistaken. And Girona were an exceptional attacking team. And this guy was, I think, a very big creative hub for them on that right side. And I liked watching them. I didn't watch them as much as maybe other sides this last season, but when I did catch them, he looked to be a big impact sub from them. At least I saw him coming on off the bench a couple of times. I think he started plenty of games too, but he seemed to be used as an impact sub, just as like a creative player for them. He was being kind of used as a ball carrier oftentimes, just seemed to be a guy that was often deployed with most of the creativity in that team. There were plenty of other creative players in that Girona team, but for me, I felt like he was one of them that stood out. Very high numbers in passing, very high numbers in dribbling. You can see in dribbling that he's actually in the top 10 percentile of almost every area of ball carrying, and when it comes to progressive carries as well. But he also had 4.69 attempted take-ons too, so he's clearly comfortable with taking on his man, and I think he could operate similarly to Pedro Porro at just this sort of inverted fullback creative type role. And if you were also to look at some of his passing stats too, you can see that he again is used as a big focus for a lot of Girona's attacks and a lot of just their general creativity at very high passing numbers. Just clearly a guy that they trusted to have the ball at his feet. Now, this player we actually already have been linked with, and he easily has the best name of any of the players that we probably will be linked with in the right back position this summer. It's the Feyenoord player, the Dutch international. I'm going to try my best here. Lutz-Harel Getreude, I think is how you would say it. I'm kind of using a bit of my German skills to try to do a Dutch pronunciation there. What I do like about Lutz-Harel, I'm going to say Lutz-Harel instead of Getreude. I don't even know which one is actually easier to say. He has had experience as an inverted fullback under Arne Slot, and I really do like that, to be honest, because I think he would offer something different to Pedro Porro, maybe slightly more defensive than Pedro Porro, but it's actually quite a good dribbler. He's also, as well, quite responsible in possession, as you can see from the passing stats that I have on screen for you. He's one of the higher, kind of involved fullbacks of any of the fullbacks in the Eredivisie. I think he's basically deploy or being used in possession almost more than any other fullback is in the Eredivisie. But then also, if you were to even look at his stats as well in the Champions League, you can see there's actually not too much of a drop-off, not too much of a difference in a lot of the build-up play and all of the general passing and general play of this Feyenoord side. He's used a lot in possession, Getreude, which gives me, I think, confidence that he could make a transition to an inverted fullback role to a system like ours, where Pedro Porro also is asked a lot to, make things happen in possession, to be part of the build-up play. And you could see Getreude perhaps being able to deal with that okay enough. His contract also expires in 2025, so there's something to think about there. That's probably even why Spurs are being linked with him. He might be leaving with Arne Slot in the same season. In 41 matches played this last season, he had 8 goals and 5 assists. All of those were in the Eredivisie, and he was clearly trusted to be used as a guy for their build-up play, as someone that is just a kind of very trusted player in that Feyenoord team. And if he's being trusted in possession, then I think that's a good sign that he would transition to this Pedro Porro role quite well enough. So let me know on Lutaro Gotroida. I don't know too much about him. Haven't watched so much of Feyenoord, but that's what I can remember, is that he's a big part of the build-up play, and I do remember him being often asked to actually go into midfield to operate more as kind of like an inverted fullback than really as kind of a traditional fullback whipping in crosses. Now, this is another one, kind of like the Shakhtar Donetsk suggestion, where somebody that I have watched occasionally that sort of stood out to me that I would hope to see get a big move away from this club and see what he's see what he's made for, and see if he's good enough. But if we are looking again for competition type roles, maybe we can take a shot on this guy. His name is Amar Dedic. Bosnian and Herzegovina international, born in Austria, though, if I'm not mistaken. Red Bull Salzburg player. He's 22 in August, 1.8 meters tall. And Red Bull Salzburg especially have been producing a lot of very good players of late, and they've been doing a good job developing those players as well into more complete footballers. And obviously, I don't think he's proven or anything at this stage. He hasn't really been playing at a very high level yet, but I do think there's a chance that he could be, a real gem. He seems to be highly rated by a lot of people, and even his transfer mark value is actually also quite high. I was surprised by how high his transfer mark value was, and I think it's been an underperforming year for RB Salzburg in general since Matthias Jaisla, a coach that I was actually a big fan of theirs, left to go to Saudi Arabia. In his last season, he had 27 matches played, 3 goals, 4 assists, and that Red Bull Salzburg team struggled, like I said, especially in the Champions League. They kind of got found out, and probably the worst side, actually, maybe of any of the Champions League teams this last season. Maybe next to Antwerp, they might have been one of the worst, and he was often defending more than he was attacking Dedic, and he looked really good, actually, in possession, and he didn't really have too many concerns defensively. If you look back at some of his numbers, I don't think there's nothing to really be that worried about defensively, but where he stood out for me was the dribbling. A good dribbler, in fact. He's in the top 15 percentile for attempted as well as successful take-ons of any of the fullbacks that participated in the Champions League, which I think is pretty impressive for a team that was more often defending and being put under the cosh, being put under the pressure, and just were kind of outmatched on a quality-wise. And the fact that he stood out in this area of taking it past his man, just creating havoc, making things happen, is a good sign that there is a good player there. And he also even had the top 20%, or he's in the top 20 percentile for carries into the penalty area, which is a good sign too for me, that he knows how to get into the box, and he's a good dribbler. He can make things happen, this Amar Dedic guy. So that's someone also I'd say too is a decent option that's outside the box that I'm not sure if we'll be linked with, but maybe in a few years' time could end up being a star player. Now we're getting into the territory of players I actually am not that knowledgeable about. They actually just stood out more on the stats page, and just when it came to young up-and-coming fullbacks, that sort of research, these guys' names did stick out. And then I just did a bit further digging in FBref, and they really stood out to me. And the first one here is Thiago Santos from Lille, Portuguese international, turns 22 in July, 1.75 meters tall. And Paulo Fonseca, I think, is still the coach over there, and he's a very attacking manager, and they've actually had a good season, Lille. I think he joined in 2023, but they finished 4th in front of Lens, in front of Marseille, Lyon, Rennes, and as well as Nice. So they had an okay season, Lille. And in 38 matches played, he had 2 goals and 2 assists. But what you really should look out for is the fact that this guy easily had one of the best ball-carrying, dribbling seasons of any fullback in Liga and probably Europe. Look at how many take-ons he's attempting. Look how many he's actually able to, succeed getting past his man with. He's in the top 10 carries for carries into the penalty areas, top 10 percentile there, top 20 percentile for shot-creating actions. This guy looks to be a real creative hub and a real creative threat. And his best attribute, obviously, is the dribbling, at least from what I can tell. And there wasn't wasn't too much defensive involvement from him, from what I can see. Maybe more that's a stylistic thing than it really is to do with, how aggressive he is defensively. And I only know so much about him. But what we would like to have is someone who can be similar to maybe like an Udoji, but maybe on the right side. And this Thiago Santos guy kind of looks like that, at least on paper, at least on the stats. And so anybody who knows more about him, do let me know. Does this make sense as a Pedro Porro alternative, as a guy to take a look at? Because he looks like he could be a real gem if any of these kind of ball carrying, dribbling kind of numbers really are true. Now, this is one that's kind of similar to Thiago Santos. Again, a guy that I don't really know much about. I don't watch too much Liga, but this guy plays for Rennes, and he's named Miguel Due, Ivory Coast international, 22 years of age. He'll be turning 22 in October, 1.87 meters tall, so he's actually taller than Thiago Santos, quite tall, in fact. And his, in this last season, he had 28 matches played, 0 goals and 2 assists. He's getting in over 3 crosses a game, but also has really good 1v1 numbers when it comes to taking it past his man. Top 10 percentile for successful take-ons, top 15 percentile for carries into the penalty area of any fullback in Liga, and he's in the top percentile for carries into the final third. So he clearly is, like the previous guy, Thiago Santos, a good dribbler, has good defensive numbers, 1v1 as well. There wasn't really any alarm bells there. Just seems to be also a good creative hub, an up-and-coming right back out of Liga, and his contract expires in 2025. So this one could be more realistic, actually, than the Thiago Santos deal. But I will stress again, not somebody who I was really that much aware of before making this video and doing the research for it. So let me know in the comments if he's someone you've heard of before, and we should really be taking a look at him. And the very last candidate, that this is a mix of kind of outside the box sort of suggestion, but also someone who you never know we could actually be linked with, because we've been starting to look, further, with Johan Lange coming through, we're looking into the championship a bit more. This guy I haven't, again, watched very much of, but his name is Milan van Ewijk, Netherlands international, forgive the pronunciation, Coventry City player, by the way, 24 in September, 1.75 meters tall. Coventry have been a very good side of recent, and they have good talent ID as well of recent. And I feel like this Coventry team, have been playing a more attacking style, at least from what I've watched them. He had 2 goals and 5 assists, which shows that he was maybe one of the more creative players in that Coventry City team. And his championship experience, I think, is a good sign that he could make a transition, I think, to the Premier League, actually, where if we're looking for, again, cheaper, maybe Pedro Porro competition or alternatives, this guy would make sense as somebody who would be able to make that jump to the Premier League, better than maybe some of the other guys that we might have mentioned who'd be coming from completely different leagues. So I actually think this is an interesting outside shout. In 42 matches played, he had 2 goals and 5 assists. He got over 3.5 crosses in a game, which is more than, I think, almost all of the other fullbacks that we've actually mentioned in this list. Solid passing numbers, used a lot in possession for this team, Milan. And then, too, what I liked about him is that, sorry, I didn't bring up the stats until now, but you can see really good goal and shot creating numbers of any championship player. And what I liked about him, too, is that he got over 4 tackles and interceptions defensively. So nothing too concerning there. It's not like you're going to be ringing any alarm bells that he get caught out in that department, and just has solid dribbling numbers. Look at that, over 1 successful take on. He's in the top 20 percentile of any fullback in the championship in that regard. Good carrying numbers in the top 15 percentile of any of the carrying numbers. So what I like about this guy is he hits and checks a lot of the boxes that we'd be looking for a fullback that could compete with Pedro Porro, and he looks to be a creative hub, okay in possession. Again, haven't watched too much of him, but anybody who has, let me know if this is not a bad outside shout. And we're going to leave it there, everybody. Really do appreciate you guys for tuning into this video. Thanks for helping me out over this week and supporting the channel. Dave should be back sometime soon. And this video, again, was just sort of about getting the ball rolling, getting the conversation started on right backs that we should be taking a look at just as fans of this wonderful club, but also guys that I think could end up being linked, making sort of predictions, if you will, for players that Spurs could end up being linked with for these Emerson Royale replacements. Once again, if you can for me, smash that like button. Feel free to grab a membership, because I think after this day, I think there will be about 3 to 4 members videos that came out this week that you would have missed out on if you are not a member. So feel free to grab that if you want to support the channel an extra way. Really have appreciated you guys over this week, and I will be seeing ya. Come on, you Spurs. Big Ange, we trust. We never stop. See you, everybody.